Right. Thank you for having me here. So the purpose of this quick presentation is just to give you an update where we are on the ActiveMQ project and community, as Richard said, but also give you a couple of highlights about some features we are preparing for the coming releases. So who knows ActiveMQ already in the room? Oh, yeah, pretty large. So yeah, just as Richard said, sorry, I have a slide, so I have to do it. So I'm JB, I'm director of the Apache Software Foundation. Again, Richard said, I'm PMC member about more than 20 Apache projects. So if you don't know how Apache is working, please let me know. I mean, we can have a chat about. So PMC means Project Management Committee. That's basically the body who define the roadmap of a project, voting the releases, and stuff like that. I'm leading all the open source initiative at Dremio. Everything about Iceberg, Pulsar, also Polaris, it's on my team. And I'm advisor on different companies. So Mesh IQ is there, so I'm helping them in terms of their roadmap. I'm also working pretty closely with some guys in the room, like Ken, he's on the back, Matt is behind. So we are working on almost every day on different projects. So just obvious, I mean, you know that already. Just to clarify where ActiveMQ is positioning itself, is basically a broker. I don't say a JMS broker, it's a broker, because ActiveMQ is dealing with different protocols. So you can do MQP, MQTT, JMS using ActiveMQ. So basically, it's all that, if you were at the keynote this morning, is everything that has been shared this morning already. So nothing is not rocket science, it's really the positioning of ActiveMQ. So in a nutshell is, ActiveMQ is based on standard. So we are not reinventing the wheel, we are just wanting to implement all the protocols. So we're also leveraging all the projects like Cupid, Apache Cupid, and others. It's a pure message runtime, so it's a broker. I'm using runtime because it's more than that. In ActiveMQ, you can also deploy Apache Camel Route. So it means that you can implement routing inside the broker. It's multi-transport. So it means that you can use TCP, but you can also use UDP, WebSocket, HTTP. So the same kind of layer, the same kind of messaging, you can expose through different protocols, which is pretty convenient. And one which is pretty nice is the VM. So basically, you can send directly a message internally to your application by embedding ActiveMQ, but you don't have to go through the network layer. So you're directly using JVM layer. So that's pretty convenient. And imagine if you mix with a network connection, so you can have buffering on messages locally, and you can push to a remote broker if you want. So that's pretty nice. It's multi-platform, meaning that you can deploy on any hardware where you have a JVM, basically. There are some slightly optimization you can leverage, but by default, you can deploy wherever you want. And it's also multi-client. So you can use the ActiveMQ broker with any kind of client. So it could be Java client, so pure JMS, but it could be C, C#, C++. We also have one protocol which is named Stomp, and Stomp allows you to support Python, Perl, PHP, stuff like that. So it means that the same broker can be used with any kind of applications, basically, out of the box. Now let's take a look about the ActiveMQ history. So ActiveMQ started in 2004 at Apache. So we started to land into the incubator. And the first real version of ActiveMQ at Apache was ActiveMQ 3, and it was in 2005. So you can see it's a pretty old project at Apache. And then in 2006, it was the first, in my opinion, it was the first production-ready feature for ActiveMQ. It was ActiveMQ 4. It's where we introduced the message groups, the ordering, and all this stuff. So this release was pretty popular, but still in the incubator. It was still an incubating project. In 2007, we became a top-level project at Apache, and it's the beginning of ActiveMQ 5. And I think ActiveMQ 5 up to now has been the longest release we supported at ActiveMQ. And it's still supported. So you have 5.19, which is still an active branch on the ActiveMQ project. So ActiveMQ 5 introduced mostly the KDB storage. I will get back on KDB later. Then another big event that happened is in 2015, we had a new project join the ActiveMQ umbrella. It was Artemis. So Artemis, it was a donation from another project code base, OrnetQ. So OrnetQ became Artemis in ActiveMQ. So it means that if you take a look right now on the website, on ActiveMQ, you're going to see two flavors. You're going to see ActiveMQ Classic. That's the older kind of branch, still active, still with a lot of feature. On some use cases, most of the use cases, pretty fast, pretty faster than Artemis at some point. And Artemis joined later. And so in 2023, we did a big milestone for the project. It's ActiveMQ 6. So I will get back on ActiveMQ 6 just after. So ActiveMQ 6 it was a big milestone. I remember Matt and we work a lot on ActiveMQ 6 with a lot of improvements, and it's where we are today. I mean, we are preparing 6.2, so 6.2 org should be released, or at least in vote, tonight if I have time, or tomorrow when I will be back home. But that's the current state. And something happened, and it happens this month. So it's a kind of announcement. Artemis and ActiveMQ will split. So it means we're going to have activemq.apache.org and artemis.apache.org. The reason is, I think we needed clarity for our users. I mean, today it was very confusing. Which one should I use, ActiveMQ or Artemis, if they are both on the same project? And actually, it was not, most of the time, it was not really a decision about the feature of a project. It was just, hey, I prefer Artemis or I prefer ActiveMQ, fair. But in that case, why not just splitting and having their own release cycle and governance of a project? So it's where we are today. So 2025, this month, it's going to be officially announced. So the board meeting is next week. So it means we're going to split and we're going to have two different TLPs, two different PMC. So we start with the same PMC members. We're going to be both on Artemis and ActiveMQ. But for you as a user, but in my opinion, it's way clearer because you know exactly the two projects. So ActiveMQ 6, as I said, is a pretty important milestone for the project. An update, a huge jump in terms of JDK supported. So today we are supporting JDK 15 and more. So it's 17 now in 6.2. We are not yet supporting fully 25. It's going to be in 6.3, I hope. We are working on it. Another big update is Spring 6 and JT 11. Matt is working on JT 12, so it's already is on track, I would say. But Spring 6, it's also a big jump. Camel 4, a lot of improvement about security and observability. For instance, I chatted a lot with Ken about that. We want to have hard support, so we're going to plan that for the 6th branch. That's ongoing. A lot of performance and scalability improvement, especially around KDB. We did a lot of changes. We also introduced the virtual thread support, which it's a boost in terms of performances. We added a lot of things about cloud, generally speaking. I mean, by cloud, I mean Docker, Kubernetes support, Helm chart. That's something that came with the version 6. But most important is we upgraded the JMS version. Because in ActiveMQ 5.19, we support both JMS 1 and 2 and Jakarta messaging 3. In 6, we only supported JMS 2 and more. It's not yet fully complete, to be honest. I mean, we are still work to do on that, but it's a huge milestone and it's a big change for the project. So if we take a look about JMS 2 especially, there are some, I guess you know already what is JMS 2, it's just a quick reminder. But for me, it's a very simplified API compared to JMS 1. I mean, JMS 1, it was so painful in terms of user application to create, connection factory, then a connection, when a session, blah, blah. It was a lot of boilerplate code for, at the end of the day, nothing major. So if you compare, this is the code in JMS 1. So I create a connection factory, I create a connection session, a message producer, and a text message. Wow, just to send a single message, okay? Now in JMS 2, it's just this, easy. You're just using the JMS context, and directly using the JMS context, you create a producer, and inline you create the message, and you send it. So that's a huge simplification of the API. Another thing that has been introduced, which is impactful for you in your application, is the way we are dealing with exception. In the past, the exception was check exception. So it means that you had to do try-catch anywhere in your code. So you produce a message, you catch a JMS exception, and it's up to you to deal with that. I'm not dealing with readily there. I mean, it's another concern. But in JMS 2, you don't have to deal with try-catch. You can deal with JMS runtime exception. So it means that it's basically unchecked. So it simplifies a lot the way you are dealing with your code. And you can do a try on resources also, which is pretty convenient to close all the resources, I mean, the connection, the session, easily. Another thing which is interesting in JMS 2 is the fact that you can directly send and receive message bodies. So remember the first code that I show you, before sending the message, you have to create the body of a message, the payload. So you do text message, session.create text message. Now it's not required anymore. You can directly do that online. So instead of doing create text message in the session, you can just send directly the payload. So it's something that it's pretty similar for the ones of you that knows Apache Camel. It's pretty similar. In Apache Camel, we just manage the body the way we want, and you send online. So that's basically the same. Another thing which is super interesting, and it existing since the beginning of ActiveMQ. So it's funny to see that now it's part of a specification, but async production is something that we supported since day one in ActiveMQ. But it was specific to ActiveMQ. So now it's part of a spec, so it means that you can consume a message. So this is a way to consume a message using JMS 1. So basically, you have two ways to consume a message. You can use a receive method, which is a blocking method. You are waiting for a message, or you can use the message listener interface. So here, I'm creating a class that implements my message listener. With JMS 2, it's not required anymore. You can do it using a Lambda directly in line. So it simplifies a lot the way you are dealing with your code in your application. So the painful things that we had to deal with in ActiveMQ is mostly, it's not about the feature of JMS, it's mostly the transition between javax.jms to jakarta.jms namespaces. It was so painful because it's an impact for you in your application, but it's also an impact for the brokers. And the broker has to deal with the two different namespaces. So what the path we use in ActiveMQ is in one release, in the 5.18 and 19 release, it was introduced in 5.18, we decided to provide two versions of the client, of the ActiveMQ client. One for Jakarta, one for JMS. And so you decide in your application to move and to migrate when you want. And the broker supported both. In ActiveMQ 6, we decided to go only one way, which is Jakarta messaging, which is the new spec. So the namespace transition, it was a little bit painful, to be honest, for the users, not much for us. Delivery control is another thing that we have to deal with. It's not yet implemented now in the broker fully. We are working on it. But basically, it's a way to you decide when you produce a message, and you can define a delay before producing the message. I don't think it's going to be so painful to implement that in ActiveMQ for a single reason. We have a scheduler internal to ActiveMQ, and this scheduler, we're already using that. So implementing that is just a hook to the scheduler we're embedding. So not a big deal. Resource management, nothing major there. As I said, you can do a try on resource, so it closes automatically. That's for your application. Pretty easy to do that. So that's the current state of ActiveMQ 6. Now some highlights about where we are going. So the first thing is just a disclaimer. I put numbers in terms of ActiveMQ releases. That's only on me. That's probably gonna change depending on the community. So it's just a vision. It's more to give a vision where we are going more about. Don't take that as a rock solid kind of commitment. Okay, it's just where we are going. So the first thing we have to do, and it's something I chatted yesterday with Ken is, and with Matt as well, is we need to complete the JMS2 and Jakarta messaging 3 support. We know that we have a couple of features that are going to be a little bit challenging to implement, but it's something that we have to do. So starting from 6.3 release, we need to add new thing to completely support the JMS2 specification. Then after that, we're going to have 6.6. Probably before that, I'm pushing and advocating a lot for authentication. So there are 2 things we need, in my opinion, is first, about the authentication, is support the OAuth authentication. We already have a pull request. We already have different design documents. So it's just a matter of commitment, and we go that way. Another thing that I want to add, and I want to propose to the community, is the OPA support. So instead of having the role defined in ActiveMQ, which is the case today, you can have roles defined on another system, so like an OPA server. So it means the profiles and the roles are going to be defined in an OPA server. And so ActiveMQ will plug to this OPA server. OPA, you can go on the openprofileagent.org, which is the spec. So it's pretty classic. We support that, for instance, in Apache Polaris. So we can leverage what exists in other projects to implement in ActiveMQ. That's the big feature. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but that's the replicated KRDB. I will, in terms of details, I will get back to that later. My proposal is to have in 6.7 as a preview. And the reason is we should already think about ActiveMQ 7. And for me, ActiveMQ 7 means replicated KRDB and removing Spring at some point. I don't know when it's going to be. That's the challenge. But for me, removing Spring, it's something that we have to consider at some point. We already started some kind of POC to leverage SPI and API, and it works pretty fine with the service loader. We can already support, instead of using ActiveMQ XML, you can have ActiveMQ YAML or JSON or whatever. So it's pretty convenient. But there's a lot of work to do, to be honest, because if you consider ActiveMQ, it's mostly a Spring application today, I mean, in a nutshell. So this is a big work, but we have to do that. So a few words about some features that I talk about. The first thing is metrics and management. We are doing already a great job in ActiveMQ to provide a lot of metrics through JMX. Okay, so you can have everything that happens in the broker thanks to JMX. If you want to see that in action, you can go to MeshIQ booth. There are a demo using ActiveMQ where you can see all the metrics with the graphics, extra. That's pretty nice. So it's something we already have, but what we should, in my opinion, add is also all about open telemetry. So adding some spans to know, hey, this scheduler execute that, and it takes this number of time to process this message. So that's something that we should plan. Another thing which is pretty, in my opinion, interesting is today you can access to the JMX layer through a REST API using a framework which is Jolokia. So Jolokia is fine, but the length of the object name on the URL extra is super large. And sometimes you have to change a lot of tuning in your application to leverage Jolokia. So another proposal is maybe to create a REST native API in ActiveMQ, not leveraging Jolokia. So removing another dependency to ActiveMQ. That's another proposal. And the web console. The web console today exists. It exists since the beginning of ActiveMQ, likely. We clearly says that this web console is not supposed to be used in production. But everyone doing that. Okay, of course. So a first step forward will be, why not removing the web console from the broker by default and having web console aside, and it's up to the user to know that if they are using the web console, it's up to them. So that's the first thing. But also I think that, to give you an idea, I think that the last 10 CVEs we had on ActiveMQ was due to the console. Okay, so it means that it's very painful to maintain. It needs a lot of work. It's a pretty old kind of console. So we are working on it. I know there are one contributor from Amazon, so Sergio, he already removed, he proposed a PR to remove the Spring Web Controller, which is a nice improvement. But I think that at some point we have to consider a new web console, but not part of a broker. It should be a side of a broker. So that's another proposal. And another one, which is what I'm working on right now, and I need really help. I know, Ken, you're interested, so we have to move forward on that, is replicated KDB. So when you use ActiveMQ and you want to have two ActiveMQ brokers, as an active passive, the only way to deal with that today is to use a shared storage. So this shared storage could be a JDBC database, or it could be an NFS, or a shared file system. It works super fine, but there are two issues with that. First is a single point of failure, because if you are losing the JDBC or if you are losing the file system, you're basically screwed. But also in cloud environment is not so convenient. So another thing that we should consider is, instead of having a single point of failure here and having a shared storage, is to replicate the state of the brokers between two brokers. So using Raft, we can imagine to have a replication. So it's what we are working on right now. To be honest, I tried the first implementation using Apache Bookkeeper. It worked, but in terms of performances, it was not as expected. So I think Raft is pretty straightforward to move on. And so that's going to be probably the next step. Okay. If you're interested to join the ActiveMQ community, so that's the website and the contributing guide. We love contributions, so please join. We are looking for new contributors. There, as you can see, is a very vibrant and active community. We have a lot of things to do, including non-code contribution. Okay, don't consider that Apache is only about code. We love all contribution, like website, documentation, user stories, whatever. So if you're interested, please join the community. Thank you. If you have any question, happy to take it.
Clemens.
Yes. So the split between Classic and Artemis, can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Because I mean, there are two projects, and what were you just talking about? Was that Classic?
Yes.
And if so, what is Artemis, and what's their, like, how do you see the coexistence of those things?
So yeah, that's a good question. So this is all about Classic, okay? Artemis and Classic, they share almost the same features. There are some features specifically in Artemis that does not exist in Classic, and the opposite is true as well. There are two features, in my opinion, that exist in Artemis that does not exist in Classic, is replication. It already exists in Artemis, and large message management. I mean, today, in the past, in Classic, we have what we name blob, binary large object message. It's not recommended to use large message in JMS, generally speaking, but Artemis are a feature for that. The reason why we split is not about the feature, it's not about the code base, it's mostly about communities. You know, at Apache, we accept projects that do exactly the same thing, maybe using exactly the same language. As soon as you prove that you have communities around your project, that's good enough. And so today, what we saw is we have Artemis community and ActiveMQ community. And there are no real bridges between the two communities. So it makes sense to have two different communities, vibrant and active communities. I don't say that you have to use Classic or Artemis. There are two different projects. You choose the one you want. But it's going to be clearer for the users and contributors. Yeah, there's a question about.
I know it's hard to say, but do you have any impression of what's the most popular protocol to use with ActiveMQ Classic? Is it the JMS, and then in which version? Is it Stomp?
Yeah. in my opinion, by experience, so that's my view, it's OpenWire, so JMS over TCP and sometimes SSL. That's the protocol mostly used. We have a bunch of users on Stomp, MQP, MQTT, but honestly, I think that probably 80% of the users are OpenWire JMS. Matt, do you agree with that? Yeah, okay, so that's my feeling as well. Yeah, but I'm not sure. I mean, WebSocket, for instance, I'm not sure we have a lot of people. I know Stomp is used with Python, for instance, but largely less than OpenWire and JMS.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
JB, thank you very much.
Thank you.